it and remember it then. Just Summers, let's start with saying, what is probate and who needs it? Briefly.
Yes, probate is, as you said earlier, is something that you need in order to deal with the assets of the deceased. If assets in the sole name of the joint, then they're frozen when somebody dies, and the probate grants
Now, the court service gets around 200,000 applications for probate a year, and maybe around a third of all deaths, so not everyone needs it. But the figures remain fairly constant, haven't it? Why is it now taking so long?
That's a very good question. There has been a lot of change in the probate registry. They centralised submission and well in local probate registries, and you can go to a local registry and speak to the registrar. Now it's all centralised. It's also mostly digitalised, not all applications, but most of them are. And I think at just about the same time as they were trialling that new system, we had a massive spike in excess deaths caused by COVID. And that wasn't just people with COVID, but people who hadn't got treatment for heart attacks, strokes, etc. And that was that perfect storm, really, creating this massive backlog of applications. And I think at the last count, it was something like 50,000 applications in that backlog.
Wow. Now, Katrina got in touch with us to say probate delays were affecting the sale of 2 houses owned by someone she knew, and they'd been waiting months for a certificate. Why does a delay cause problems with selling a house?
You can't complete a house sale until you've got that probate document. So whilst you can market the property, you can send people round to have a look, you can't actually sign on the dotted line. We tell our clients it's best not to start marketing until you've got probate, because then you know you can go straight ahead and be found with a purchaser. But if you do market before you've got probate, you won't then have to delay and can't sign the completion documents until you've got the probate.
Yes, and of course that's obviously very difficult, and you might lose the sale, as we heard from Katrina. But also, your members said 2/3 of them said they've seen cases of severe financial hardship for beneficiaries. How is hardship caused by these delays?
If you can imagine somebody's died, their bank account's been frozen, maybe there's a rental income going into it or some other money, and you can't access that money. You can't use it to pay bills, you can't use it to pay utilities. You can imagine what financial hardship there is. Now there is actually an emergency probate procedure if it's extreme hardship, if you've literally got no access to money, and that can be done, so it's worth speaking to somebody like a step parent to see if that's possible.
But you have to pay tax, and your inheritance tax, if it's due, it's only a small minority who pay it, and if it's due, you have to pay 6 months, don't you? If you probate for a year, or more than 6 months, you can really pay.
That's correct, and unfortunately HMRC are not willing to extend the deadlines for the payment of inheritance tax to take into account that you may not pay it yet because you've got probate.
Yes, so charging 40% at the moment.
Yes,
Now,
yes.
as I said, the probate office this week has closed its helpline every afternoon, only open for the past 12 months. That won't help people who call, will it? Many people must call not because they need it, but to find out if they don't.
That's correct, yes. And there are other sources of information online. The government has quite a lot of information about how to deal with incitation of death. They'll tell me one service. It's worth looking through those. But a lot of calls will be to the probate registry to see if they do or don't need probate.
Yes, of course, more in the morning, and they might have to wait longer. There is a wait chat, I understand. Right.
Yes.
And these problems are faced by relatives, aren't they? They don't usually get them. What do they do if there's a delay?
As I said, there is a probate emergency application which is assessed on its facts. If there are really extreme circumstances, like you've sold a property and the person's died before they can complete it. Otherwise, it's a question of loans from banks and paying interest on the interest on the tax.
All expensive and difficult. And very, very briefly, this is being looked at by a House of Commons committee. Just in a few words, what changes would you like to see, Jane?
We'd like to see more personnel at the probate registry and more senior personnel who are able to make decisions on complicated legal matters, and we'd like to see more involvement with the professionals to help on that.
Jo Summers, thank you. And in response to this, His Majesty's Courts and Tribunal Service told us yesterday that most probate applications are processed within 12 weeks, and it's hiring and training more staff to deliver further improvements. Most people don't know how much, if anything, the charges are what the charges are being taken from their pension fund. And that's the headline conclusion from a report by People's Partnership, which has been shared exclusively with Moneybox. It surveyed 1,000 people who had transferred their pension in the last 2 years without financial advice. Nearly 3 out of 4 of them didn't know what the fees were on their old pensions or what they were being charged for the new one. 1 in 10 apparently didn't even know there were charges. And of course, charges can make a huge difference to the amount you get when you retire. Rimini is in her late 20s. She took part in that survey and she told our reporter Joe Krasner what happened when she transferred her pension.
I actually seen an advert for a company and I just thought, oh, that would be quite useful, you know, put them all in one place, I kind of know where they are. I didn't really do any research. I didn't really think that there was that many companies about or it was a big thing. I think I was sort of naive to what it actually entails.
So what happened?
Certainly, as time went on, I was sort of aware of sort of the percentage of returns, and maybe the company that I went with weren't as transparent as I first thought. Leading on from that led me to do a lot more research on sort of pensions and companies and transferring.
So you did the research after you made the transfer?
I did, yes.
And how did that turn out by doing it that way round?
I don't think it went in my favour at all. I mean, the option is still there for me to transfer, but I would have saved myself a lot of time and effort if I would have just researched beforehand. But then again, I feel like there's sort of a lack of education and knowledge on sort of pensions in general, especially sort of around my age group, because it was only afterwards I did the transfer and I spoke to sort of my friends and people like myself, and it was like no one really knew it was a thing, or knew where to research, or wasn't aware that there was all these companies available. So it's sort of like I got grabbed in with this flashy advert, and it's only afterwards I'm like, okay, maybe that is the best choice for me.
So what are you going to do now?
I've actually transferred my pension again already to another company. There was a better return, that was a lot more transparent, that I felt gave me a better sort of customer experience. And it gave me that reassurance that that company was a better fit for what I needed it for.
Rimini speaking to Joe Krasner. Well, listening to that is Patrick Heath-Ley. He's Chief Executive of People's Partnership. It provides the People's Pension. That's a workplace scheme with more than 6.5 million members, and they come largely through auto-enrolment. Patrick Heath-Ley, Rimini took part in your survey. She decided to move her pensions without advice, but then she had to move them again. Was she typical of what you found?
Hi Paul, yes, I think she is, and actually typical of quite a number of our members that we speak to who are considering, you know, either moving in or out of our scheme. Very much underneath this is a lack of knowledge amongst people of some of the critical factors. Now, just to give some context to that, I think there's 2 main reasons people are looking to move their pensions, and they're receiving a lot of encouragement to do that. But one is that the system of workplace pension, when you move jobs, your pension stays with your previous employer. They're the one that selected the scheme. So there's a greater move amongst people to move their historic pensions to their current provider at the new employer. The other one is more an encouragement to sort of hoover up all their pensions into one place and effectively consolidate. It becomes easier to manage, easier to think about perhaps, you know, what they'll have in retirement. The things that came out of the research a lot was a lot of assumptions around providers being broadly the same in the schemes that they have, and an overwhelming driver is convenience for people, supported by you know, sort of encouragement from the advertising they see.
And what about charges? Because, you know, you did find many people didn't even know, some people didn't know there were charges, and most of them didn't know how much they were being charged.
Absolutely, Paul. And as you said, 70% of people didn't know their charges on their scheme or the scheme they were going to, and actually 10% of people didn't know that charges existed. So there's very limited information around for people on the fundamentals of pension schemes, particularly charging.
And what difference can lower or higher charges make?
So to bring that to life, average earner in the UK, and I mean average earner, is around, they're going to save around 200,000 over their lifetime, so it's not a small amount of money. If you make a selection of a scheme and go from a scheme that's charging, let's say, 0.4% to a scheme that's 0.75%, so those numbers don't sound very big, it actually makes a difference of around £70,000 in the size of pot you might have when you come to retire, and that can mean that you have to continue working for several more years to make up that difference. So it's pretty fundamental to the value that you'll get.
Yes, it's extraordinary, isn't it, that 0.35% that you might think is negligible costs you over 70,000 quid by the time you retire. That is quite extraordinary. And you mentioned these charges, maybe 0.4, maybe 0.75. How hard is it to find that basic information?
It's incredibly difficult. We've had a look across, and I think we're reflecting on this ourselves. Very difficult for people to find the information very easily on websites. You have to click through multiple pages, and then when you do find it, you then have this really difficult maths challenge to get over. I mean, it is very hard doing the maths to try and work out where that value is.
Let me ask you about your charge. I think you charge 0.5%. Why do you do that? Why not a flat fee for the work you do?
Well, we're a little bit different. We're a not-for-profit organisation founded for social good, so our charging practice is to try and alleviate down the impact of charges as you accumulate your pension pot. So starting at only £3,000, we will start to reduce the impact of charging by lowering your charge rates. We operate through a series of bands that range between £3,000 and £50,000. So quite nominal in terms of the amounts, but it's really a reflection of the impact of charging on pension pots over time.
What would you like to see changed?
Well, I think the industry has to step up here. I mean, it's very clear people are not well equipped by us, the industry, to really think about what's important when transferring. Now, there is help out there. Money Helper Service, for example, the government does have some information on, but I don't think it's as succinct as it could be. You know, I'd like to see the industry moving much quicker to be more transparent and more comparable at scheme level. You know, we should be publishing standardised information that allows people to really understand the different schemes out there and can help them make that decision.
Patrick Keithley of People's Partnership, thanks. And that website, moneyhelper.org.uk, and search PensionWise. Now, for the first time, most couples in England and Wales who live together are not married or in a civil partnership. New figures from the Office for National Statistics show that in 2022, a fraction under half were married or in a civil partnership. 10 years earlier, it was slightly more than half. As we said before on Moneybox, if you live together in connubial bliss, but without being wrapped in that marriage blanket, there could be financial trouble ahead. Our reporter Dan Whitworth spoke to married couples at a service station on the M6.
Paul from North Wales. And who's this?
This is Coral.
And how long have you two been married?
5 years?
Important question.
Yeah.
I know that there's benefits to being married for tax reasons and stuff, so it makes sense, doesn't it? If you're happily together, then make it easier.
Definitely be a benefit and something you would want, without a doubt.
Tom Strickland, 66, from Corby in Northamptonshire.
You wear it well, Tom. You wear it well. And who is this, and how long have you been married or partnered?
Marion, we've been married 42 years. I'm an accountant, so...
Right, well, brilliant. I don't need to explain anything to you then. No. Tell me your thoughts on it then, please. What do you think about the fact you obviously get those rights as a married couple, but not if you're living together? Your thoughts, please.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's worth getting married just for that reason, isn't it, really? I think some of our friends actually got married very recently after living together for about 40 years, just for that reason, really, because they were selling their business and, yeah, it was the inheritance tax benefits.
Should there be that difference?
Possibly not nowadays. Why should there be?
What makes you say that?
Because a lot of people don't want to get married nowadays, do they? But if they're still committed in a relationship and they want to sort their money out the way they want to sort it, should just maybe be across the board, really.
Mark from Liverpool.
Steph from Liverpool.
Mark and Steph, are you married, are you living together, or are you just random people who bumped into each other here?
Married.
How long for?
7 years, nearly 8.
Glad to have to hear that, mate.
It should be for love, not for money.
And it costs a lot of money as well, depending on what you want to do, like what type of marriage, and people try and make it bigger and better, and everything's getting more expensive, isn't it, cost of living.
Ibrahim, are you married? Are you with someone? Are you in a partnership?
Married.
And how long have you been married for?
6 years.
Couples who just live together, they don't get those same benefits. What do you think about that?
I think it's a good incentive for people to get married, but then at the same time I can understand how it's not fair, and I know if I was to live on my own I'd struggle, so it's good having my wife with me.
inimitable Dan Whitworth, finding that married people on the M6 at least do seem to know there are financial benefits from marriage, even if it's love that keeps them together. Alice Hayne is personal finance analyst at Best Invest. She explained the not so romantic but important tax advantages of marriage.
Married couples and civil partners can transfer assets such as cash, investments and property between them without facing tax charges. It means couples can maximise two sets of allowances, such as the personal savings allowance applied to interest on cash savings, or their combined £40,000 ISA allowance. Married couples switching investments or cash between them to fill up ISAs, for example, won't face any capital gains tax or inheritance tax implications. And don't forget about the annual marriage allowance, where a lower earner can transfer part of their annual tax-free personal allowance to their spouse or civil partner to create a tax saving. It might not sound romantic, but it makes financial sense.
Well, those are the pluses, but what about the minuses of living together in unmarried bliss? Linda Giles is a partner at solicitors Giles Wilson Law. Linda Giles, most couples live together now without legal protection. What's the biggest financial risk they run?
The biggest financial risk is in terms of if they were to break up during their lifetime and one party owned the property, for example, and the other didn't. The partner who didn't own the property would have very little rights potentially over that property and their home.
Yes, and of course a lot of marriages break up, never mind unmarried couples, don't they? And what about if one of them dies? Because sadly that does happen.
That can be pretty catastrophic. We've already spoken about the inheritance tax implications, which are much worse, but there's also the fact that if an unmarried person dies without a will, then we're subjected to the intestacy rules, which would give them no rights at all, potentially without claiming in court a dependency claim, for example.
Yeah, so you've actually got to go to court to establish a right. You get nothing automatic. Marriage and indeed civil partnership gives you automatic rights. That's the important thing. If you're not married, you may or may not get them, and you may have to spend money and worry a lot about it. And what about people who are living together, who are listening, who share the rent, maybe the mortgage payments? What should they be thinking about to make things better for them?
It is better to talk about this and perhaps take legal advice at the outset, although it's not very romantic, but a cohabitation agreement can define the rights. If you own differing shares or have contributed differently to the ownership of the property, you can have a declaration of trust that defines what you expect if the relationship breaks down in terms of the value of the property.
People do find it a bit difficult, though, don't they, when they're getting together, to say, well, hang on a minute, there's a long document here for you to sign, or at least we'll go and talk to a solicitor. But do you think that's really important, and particularly if you've got assets?
I think it's hugely important, and hopefully they find it easier than at the time they're breaking up, and so that's definitely the time to do it.
No, definitely not. Of course, some people think, don't they, that if we live together for long enough, maybe if we have children, we're somehow, they often call it a sort of common law marriage.
Yes, there is no such thing as a common law marriage. If you have children, the landscape is slightly different, potentially, young children. It's also important, as you've mentioned, there's no difference between civil partnership and marriage, but make your decision as to how you're going to live with somebody with the knowledge, I would say, is my biggest tip.
Yes, and if there are children, much more complicated.
It can be much more complicated, but also you really do want to ensure that you know your rights and how you would end up financially in any scenario.
Yes, you have to sort of prepare for the worst, really. And we've talked before on the programme about the benefits now that are given, the bereavement payment that is given to parents who aren't married if one of them dies. Doesn't apply, of course, if you don't have children, does it?
No, not at all.
No. So is that something, I mean, that would be £4,300 if you were married, but
yes.
Nothing if you're not.
And similarly, potentially with pension rights or death and service benefits, there's often the opportunity to nominate those in favour of somebody, but you have to take positive steps to benefit your partner.
Right, if you're married or civil partner, that would happen almost automatically, but if you're not,
usually so.
But you can nominate a partner
usually
nowadays.
So, yes.
And just sort of finally, there will be people listening, they're couples, they don't want to get married or civil partners, it doesn't suit them. Just briefly, what should they do?
Well, they should talk about what would happen if one of them died. Make a will for certain, look at their nominations for death benefits, and sadly they should also talk about the possibility of breaking up and what they would want for each other.
especially if they had assets. Thank you very much.
Especially if they had children as well.
of Giles Winston-Law, thanks. Now, the Ministry of Justice said it is reviewing the laws around marriage and divorce, and then after that, it will look at cohabiting couples, so no change is imminent. And I should add that the inheritance and separation rules for unmarried couples, though not the tax rules, are slightly different and better in Scotland. On Wednesday, Felicity Hannah will be here with Moneybox Live, looking specifically at the finances of parents who are separating. Always a difficult time, especially when there are children, so how do you make sure money and possessions and housing and indeed care of children are split fairly? Send your questions, experiences to our experts, moneybox@bbc.co.uk. And emails are coming in on this. Dan's here. Dan.
Well, Heather told us how her dad died mid-December 1997, probate granted the following month. Her mum died last year and it took 14 weeks. Also, Peter said many areas of public administration are working well, though. And the last one on tax breaks for married couples, but not cohabiting ones. Martin said simply, the law needs to catch up with society.
Indeed. Well, thanks, Dan. And if Moneybox is your special radio programme in your life that you can't live without, why not show your love by subscribing to our podcast on BBC Sounds and Never Miss the Next. And as a bonus, you get all those Moneybox Lives as well, because those programmes just won't be split up. Today, the much-loved team was Dan Whitman, Joe Crafton, and Sandra Hardiel. The studio manager was Chloe Wilson, and beloved editor was Jessica Hale, and I'm Paul Lewis.
This is BBC Radio 4. Any questions is after the 1 o'clock news. And then at 2, any answers. Alex Forsyth is taking your calls today.
The death of the Russian political activist Alexei Navalny has prompted reaction around the world. The Foreign Secretary David Cameron has said there must be consequences, while in Russia, police have reportedly been detaining people as they try to lay flowers. So, what next? Get in touch with your thoughts. Perhaps you've lived in Russia or have experience of the country. 03700 100 444. 2 by-election defeats for the Conservatives this week. So where does that leave the party's prospects? Is the internal wrangling over its direction doing irreversible damage? And what about the challenge from Reform UK? Maybe you voted in those by-elections. 03700 100 444. This week the UK officially entered a recession, but perhaps I didn't need to tell you that. Maybe you've already been feeling the effects of a stagnating economy. Do you run a business, or have you been struggling with rising prices? And what do you want to see from the government? Is a smaller state and lower taxes the answer, or should we be investing more in the pursuit of growth? And let's talk about the impact of the internet on young people. Has social media affected your mental health or that of someone you know? Are you a parent trying to navigate the perils of the online world? Or maybe you think it can be a force for good. 03700 100 444. You can also email any.answers@bbc.co.uk. Text 84844. Those texts will be charged at your standard message rate. Check with your provider for the exact costs. Or on social media, use the hashtag BBCAQ. All the lines are open now.
Comedy now on Radio 4 with Andy Zaltzman and the News Quiz.
Hello. After an official assessment of this week's news, the human race has been relegated. We have sadly just dropped out of the top 1,000 cleverest species on Earth. Therefore, I, Andy Zaltzman, a known human, am being assisted as host of this week's news quiz by a dolphin. Okay, right, you girls bipeds a piece of your mind. Oh, jeez, that is harsh. All right, no, I understand you are worried about the price of fish. Oh, it's a great sport, you just don't understand it. Anything else? Family show, Dolph. Right. We need to get this thing started. Can you just please say welcome to the news quiz? I'm Andy Zaltzman. Later on, we will have the latest on the rumours that in an effort to become title challengers again, Manchester United have put in a £180 million bid for Taylor Swift. We'll be testing whether our panellists can echolocate a small fish 200 metres. Have you written my script as well? Apology accepted. Our teams this week, in tribute to where A, the economy, and B, our politics are going, are Team Recession against Team Regression. On Team Recession we have Rachel Parris, and from the Times, Daniel Finkelstein. Regression we have Andrew Maxwell and Zoe Lyons. And our first question to Rachel and Daniel, who said bye to whom before this month's Rochdale by-election.
That was Keir Starmer saying goodbye to his candidate in Rochdale. They were basically having a competition to see which conspiracy theorist would succeed Cyril Smith, and ended up deciding it wasn't the Labour one. The best bit of it, in my view, were the excuses that they used about how determined they were to get rid of it. I've received quite a lot of anti-Semitic correspondence over time, but this week more than you would expect. So one of the things that's ironic is the more anti-Semitism there is, the more insults you get about it. I used to get really cross and I would reply with all sorts of denials of it, and now I just reply, thank you for being in touch to warn me about the Jews. I'll certainly keep an eye out for them, they sound terrible. But there was, my favourite thing was a kind of, I got sent this thing which was a web of Jewish influence in Britain with all the different organisations, and I noticed that at the centre of it was my dentist's wife. Some of those conspiracy theories are pretty eccentric.
Does that make you wonder about what's going on in your mouth?
Yeah, so Azhar Ali was the candidate. Footage emerged of him sharing conspiracy theories about the October terrorist attacks in Israel. There's not much to ask for potential MPs not to fall for conspiracy theories.
No, I mean, that's sort of basic, isn't it? You know, you wouldn't want your foreign minister saying, oh, my job is now an awful lot easier, of course, because the world is flat. You'd be like, oh. It's the people of Rochdale that I feel sorry for, because their selection of candidates now is like the worst game of marry, shag, avoid. It's just... He's still on the ballot paper, isn't he? Because he's still there. Galloway, and some bloke who was sexting a 17-year-old girl before he was stepped down as MP. And you just think, it's the people of Rochdale I feel very, very sorry for.
Yeah, no matter who gets in, they still have to live there.
So Ali said, you know, spouted this terrible conspiracy theory, but to be fair, then Starmer, with cat-like reflexes, responded, depending on what kind of cats you know. If you know quite ponderous, cautious cats who move slowly and are very keen for you to know that their father was a tool maker, then he had a cat-like response about 3 days later.
Do you think it would be easier now if we just put Keir Starmer on the Lazy Susan? Because U-turns take up so much energy, we could just spin him around in the direction he wants to go.
So, to be fair to Starmer, he said the phrase decisive action 7 or 8 times when he talked about how he behaved with this. So I think it's like wishing it. If you say it enough times, it will become true.
Does he kick his heels as he's doing it?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, in terms of where Labour are now, Andrew, what do you think? How do you think they're...
How many years have we all wasted our lives having to think about the internal politics of the two major parties? Years we've wasted on these people.
Well, correct, 2 points. Not asking your own question, but, you know, got to work the system.
I think it's very difficult to choose candidates, basically, and it is. I've been involved in lots of these, and I remember in the SDP we had a candidate who was missing his front tooth, and he had it in his top pocket, and he put it in only for press conferences.
Did your dentist's wife have anything?
I think this is my theory about anti-Semitism. I think the vast majority of British people have never met any Jewish people. It might seem really weird for a comedian, because obviously our life is a weird mixture of Judeo-Christian fun. That's what's going on here.
Is that what you've got on your Tinder profile?
You better believe it. It's a burning bush as it happens. But it's also the world of conspiracy. It's this other Labour candidate, so I'll step back. Whereas in this one, it's the Rochdale one. You claim that Israel let it happen. Because that's it's ism in conspiracy theorists. Make it happen, conspiracy theorists, and let it happen.
Which category does the Queen slept with David Attenborough fall into? Is it make it happen or let it happen? Because I think she made it happen.
I didn't see that episode of Blue Planet.
It was very blue.
My son knows the conspiracy theories. One day, this art was a website for flat earthers, like a flat earther society in America. And in sort of an mission statement on the website was, the world is indeed flat. Every day, millions of people realize that they've been lied to from all around the globe.
Let's have another question now. Now, I only want wrong answers for this one because the correct answer is so numbingly depressing. Over the last few months in the UK, there has been a huge rise in what?
Bread.
Bread.
Is the answer good vibes? Is it morale? General contentment?
Unfortunately, the correct answer is anti-Semitic abuse, which is at its worst for 40 years. Keir Starmer has claimed that he's changed Labour as regards its anti-Semitism problems. Can we put them charitably? Do you think he has, genuinely, Daniel?
I do, but it's quite a depressing thing that he had to do that. You know, when I was at school, it never occurred to me that we'd ever end in a situation where someone could claim I've managed to make the Labour Party less anti-Semitic. But I think any fair-minded human being, he definitely has done that. It's just, obviously, you can tell from this week, there's still a problem.
Yes, Labour, once again, this week, is showing that whilst it may have a clear edge over the Conservatives, it is still struggling with its fierce, ongoing rivalry with its toughest, most stubborn enemy, itself. Don't forget, if you want, for whatever reason, the full list of candidates, they are available from the BBC website. Just go to bbc.co.uk/withering echo of a democratic dream. You'll either read the list or just make up a better one in your head to make yourself feel better about the state of our politics. Labour withdrew its support for its candidate after a wave of criticism for not withdrawing its support for its candidate. This after it didn't withdraw its support for its candidate despite footage emerging of its candidate claiming that Israel deliberately allowed the Hamas terrorist atrocities to happen last October. Amidst further allegations of vacillation and indecision, Keir Starmer insisted that he was decisive. And to be fair to the Labour leader, he did decisively back Azhar Ali and then equally decisively withdraw that backing. So I guess that was double decisive. He's doubled down on it. In another problem regarding the state of our politics, Tobias Ellwood's house was euphemistically attended by pro-Palestine protesters this week, after which he said that we are losing the art of what?
Naked mime.
Who sits down and go, you know what we need to do to free Palestine? We ought to go and get Tobias Ellwood's children on side. So let's go and demonstrate outside their bedroom, because that will really help the cause. I don't know who thinks that.
You know, the thing is, when you're Irish as well, you know, having, like, lived through the Troubles, it's just the only people that can solve it are Israelis and Palestinians. As a child, listening to outsiders speak on about Northern Ireland, knowing that it would make no odds whatsoever. Peace is a process. It can take generations. It can take hundreds of years. It involves an enormous amount of goodwill and a huge amount of patience. And let me tell you, we're almost there in Northern Ireland. Because at the last national census in Northern Ireland, it's no longer majority Protestant. It's not majority Catholic either.
Is it
No.
The theories are right.
It's no. It's now the majority is neithers. That's what they put on the census. Instead of Protestant or Catholic, they put neither. And the first time I heard that, I was like, oh my God, this is genuine progress here. These are people that are no longer willing to fall into these two silos of one flag against the other in a 300-400 years of internecine ethno-religious hatred that seems to go on and on. But, you know, I know Northern Ireland really well. And it could be the most liberal, nice, arty audience. You could go on stage in North County Down. I can see you're not Protestants, you're not Catholics, you're all neithers now. At least half of that audience would be seething with rage, under their breath going, it's pronounced neither.
Tobias Ellwood wasn't even at home, was he? Was he sort of home? It's just so difficult to know which one to protest outside.
What he said was that we are losing the art of how to disagree. Would you agree with that?
Absolute rubbish. But the demonstrators went by 8:30, which is, it sounds like that's the sort of protest I like, in bed by 9. Perhaps the first thing I thought they left by 8:30, went, that is a good demonstration.
What makes me very upset about all this anti-Semitism aside is this has made me agree with the Conservative, because I do agree with him. I know what he means about with everything that's going on with Palestine. I get what he's saying is that it's almost impossible to talk about, because the minute you come down going, well, that's absolutely horrific and appalling,
people go, oh, well, I suppose you love this side of it then. I suppose you're on their side. It's like, no, I think all it is horrific and appalling, and I don't know how to fix it, so I don't know what I, as a literal comedian, can add to this. So, unfortunately, I hate to say I agree with Tobias Ellwood, but probably only on that one.
So are you claiming, Rachel, that the human brain is capable of holding two slightly conflicting thoughts at the same time?
That's what I and my friend Ellwood are saying.
The House of Conservative MP Tobias Ellwood was, to put it extremely euphemistically, attended by pro-Palestine protesters. The protesters were from the Palestine Solidarity Movement. Now, many people have solidarity with Palestine and its people, if not its leadership. They said it was legitimate for the group to stage an emergency demonstration. Again, no quibble so far. Events in Gaza are at a terrible moment. There's increasing criticism of Netanyahu and his actions, his brutality and his strategy from around the world, including many long-standing allies of Israel. So they held that protest outside his house and shared his address online. You ruined it! At the end of our first round, the scores are 4 to Zoe and Andrew and 3 to Rachel and Daniel. Let's move on now to lighten the mood a bit with love. It was Valentine's Day this week. Did any of you celebrate it? Who says romance is dead?
Come on, you can get it over the counter now. Come on, you've given it a go, haven't you? You've given it a go.